Welcome back to our study in the two letters Paul wrote to Timothy. We are in the second letter and in the third chapter. In our last session, we saw how Paul shared with Timothy about people who come into the ministry and try to get into the church and cause a lot of problems. And he even compared them to two sorcerers out of the Old Testament from Egypt. So we see he's really serious about this. And then we're going to pick up here in verse 10 where he kind of turns the tables in a positive way. Chapter 3 of 2 Timothy, verse 10. But you followed my teaching, conduct, purpose, faith, patience, love, perseverance, persecutions, and sufferings such as happened to me at Antioch and at Iconium and at Lystra. What persecutions I endured, and out of them all the Lord delivered me. And indeed, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. Paul makes a very dynamic statement that we don't like to read. He says if you're really living it right, if you're really standing up for your faith, you're going to be persecuted. We don't like persecution, especially in our culture. We like to take the easy road to everywhere. The path of least resistance is not the biblical way. And so we have to be aware of that. You notice that the qualities he mentions to Timothy about Timothy's life and how Timothy has so far reflected Paul. And as Paul walked in the light of Christ, and as Paul grew his faith because of his personal relationship with Jesus Christ, so Timothy has too, under the mentorship of Paul. And that is something we need to think about. We need people around us to help show us the example, because when tough times come, if we don't have an example to follow, we will kowtow, we will cave. And that's what happens to most Christians. Whenever they're put in a situation where it's you stand up for your faith or you just kind of shrivel up and die, maybe emotionally, maybe mentally, maybe psychologically, maybe philosophically, maybe just within the bounds of the culture. Most Christians don't stand up to resistance. But yet Paul says very clearly, he says, and all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. It's kind of an acid test. If you've suffered for Christ, you're on the right track. Now, that doesn't mean we'll always suffer physically. We may, and I believe we're living in a time where that's very possible, but we haven't as of yet. But if we have to, so be it. Our important stance is in godliness that is found in Christ Jesus. When we get that right, they can persecute us all we want. We know what the end reward is. That is to be with Jesus Christ in eternity forever. We'll pick up there in our next session.